Today's episode is sponsored by Von Finch Capital. If you're interested in investing alongside me in the same type of real estate opportunities that I personally invest in, then head over to Von Finch Capital and join their private investor network. You can do so at vonfinch.com/invest. Join me on that next deal, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside. This is the Investor Mindset Podcast. So let's talk a little bit about what are the 4 ways to produce income, to produce cash flow, and how are each of those impacted differently by taxes? Because I think this is going to be very eye-opening for some folks. Some of you guys are going to be very up to speed on this, and we're going to get into some advanced stuff in a second. But I think this will really help outline why it's so important to be investing, why it's so important to move your way through these different options.
Right. So Robert Kiyosaki is best known for his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but his second book is equally important. It's called Cash Flow Quadrant. And in there, what Robert explains is that there's 4 primary ways that we make money. We can either make it as an employee, we can get more education, or decide to buy our job, and we can be self-employed or a superstar, whatever. We can make money as a big business owner, having 500 employees or more. We could make our money as a professional investor, an inside investor. The interesting thing is, and I've traveled the world with Robert talking about this, is that how you earn your money has a major impact on how much tax you pay. Typically, somebody who earns a good living, both in the US, by the way, and around the world, as an employee is going to pay about 40% in tax. If you then graduate, and I say graduate with a smile because, an entrepreneur, we're the only people in the world who will work twice as long to earn half as much, just so that we can have the choice of doing so. And what's more is we pay a higher tax rate because the small business tends to pay 50 to 60% because they're paying both the employer side and the employee side. Then you can, if you go to the big business, then you go to Warren Buffett's world, where he goes, I have a lower tax rate than my assistant. Well, that would be true. He probably pays his assistant hundreds of thousands of dollars, is my guess. And she's probably, or he's probably making $300,000-$400,000 and paying 40% tax. Okay. Whereas Warren Buffett's paying 20%. Why? Because big businesses pay 20% in tax on an average basis. Then if you get to the professional investor side, which includes real estate, energy, agriculture, those types of things, now you can actually get to zero. And that's just because those are the activities that the government wants most. They want you to put your money there, whether it's developing housing for people or whether it's developing housing for a business. Okay, that would be commercial. Or whether it is developing fossil fuel energy, which has been in vogue for the last 50 years, or it's developing renewable energy, which is becoming currently in vogue, or whether it's raising cattle or planting crops. Okay, those are the things where the professional investor, they end up with a very low tax rate. I mean, farmers and ranchers, they pay very little tax. I mean, they just do. Okay, that's the way the tax law works because that's such an important part of the economy and the important part of feeding the people. The government wants them to do that. And so in return, they pay very low tax.
And so understanding this, as many of our listeners are sitting in that in the employee seat, or potentially even sitting in the self-employed or professional seat where there are doctors, lawyers, attorneys, they're earning a lot of money, but they're also paying a lot in taxes. What are some of the things that they can do to start transitioning out of paying high taxes and start benefiting from some of the incentives that are out there?
Well, really, there's 2 primary things they have to do. First of all, if you want to have what rich people have, you have to behave like rich people. Right? So if you want to have low tax rates like a big business, you have to behave like a big business. So for example, you can't be a sole proprietor. Sole proprietors pay the highest tax. But a big business would never be a sole proprietor. I mean, that would, by definition, they're never going to be a sole proprietor. Okay. You're going to set up your company as an entity, either a limited liability company, a limited partnership, or a corporation, right? You're going to behave differently. The curious thing is people who pay 60% in the S could pay 20% in the, even though they're still an S. Okay, because we have what we call the Constitution of the United States, equal protection, which means that two people doing the same thing get the same result. Okay, from a government standpoint, that's true in tax as well. So the tax law is inherently fair from the standpoint that two people doing the same thing get the same result. Now, so that's one thing you can do. I mean, easily you can bring your tax rate down from 60% to 20%, just by behaving like that B quadrant business does. Second of all, you could then become a professional investor. It's not that hard. Okay, it doesn't take a lot of time. Technically, under the tax law, it takes 15 hours a week. Okay, to become a professional investor. That's all. So you could do that as a part-time job and become a professional investor. So you do have to get the education. That's the key, right? To be a professional investor, you do have to focus. You do have to know exactly what you're doing, else you're going to get hammered in the investing, because amateurs get hammered and professionals get rich. That's the way investing works. But what also happens is that, interestingly enough, the amateur investors don't get the same tax benefits as the professional investors. So what the Congress has said is that, look, if you're a professional investor, we're going to give you one tax rate. If you're an amateur investor, we're going to give you a different tax rate.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And it's good to understand that. So for everyone who's in those positions, work with your CPA or find somebody who can actually help you move from that 60 to the 20. You want somebody who's going to be an advisor, someone like Tom or someone from his network or others that can help you understand how to move from the S to the B if you are a business owner or sole proprietor. With that said, what are some of the advantages of investing when it comes to taxes?
Oh my heavens. Well, you pay no tax. So let's, you can kind of go through different asset classes, right? Here, you think of the four asset classes. You've got business, real estate, paper, and commodities. The asset class, what's the asset class that doesn't look like the others from a tax standpoint? It's paper. And that's because you never get, unless you're putting your money into a deferral mechanism like an IRA, 401k, or pension plan, you don't get a deduction for investing in paper assets. Okay, there's no deduction to invest in paper assets unless you're in a retirement plan. Okay, and then that's just a deferral to a later year. That's just postponing. It's like you don't like vegetables as a kid, you eat your broccoli last. Yeah, the world may end and you may not have to eat your broccoli, but it's going to be cold most likely, and it's not going to be very tasty. And that's what happens with retirement money. So that's the only place you can't get an immediate deduction. Right now, we operate in the U.S. under what I would consider to be a consumption tax. In other words, any money that you earn that you consume, and by the way, saving it is the same thing as consuming it because you're not putting it into the economy. Okay, so you are consuming it, you're hoarding it. Basically, saving and hoarding, same thing. Okay, you're hoarding cash. Okay, if you hoard or if you consume, you're going to pay tax. If you reinvest, you're not going to pay tax. So you can, for any business owner knows this. If you spend money in your business, you get a deduction, right? So this last year and a half, 2 years, this pandemic thing, you've got all these people working from home. Well, if you're an employee working from home, you don't get a home office deduction. But if you're a business owner working from home, you do. Okay, so what's the difference? Well, the difference is the government prefers people who run their own business to people who are employed by somebody else. There are tax advantages to being self-employed. So that's a good example of you can just change your facts. We always say, if you want to change your tax, you need to change your facts. So the fact you're going to change is instead of being an employee, you're going to be an employer. That fact, if you're willing to make that change, now things like your home office, things like your car, things like the meals when you go out to eat, even your travel can be deductible. Now, it's not always going to be. You still have to make the choice to actually make it a business expense. There are qualifications for that. But as long as you do that, you have the choice and you're able to deduct it. So, the key here is that if you take your money and you reinvest it in the economy, particularly in those ways that the government prefers, such as business. They love business, or real estate. They love real estate. Energy, they love energy, or agriculture. Those are really the key places where you reinvest your money that way, you're going to get a major tax benefit.
Oh, thank you for joining for another incredible episode of the Investor Mindset. It's such a joy to be able to share these beliefs, these thoughts, these ways of living with each and every one of you guys, because I just know the power that it can make. And for some of you, for the select few of those people who are truly committed to going after their goals, the people who really believe that there's another level from where they're operating right now, the people who are ready to make change happen rapidly. And even if you're somebody who is stuck, who knows what you need to do, you know exactly the strategy, but for some reason you're not doing it, for those people, there's another option. There's another level that you can reach. And what I've noticed after coaching tons and tons of people through this process is that there's a simple formula. And when you can start to understand how to unlock those pieces within yourself, you'll start to feel more vibrant. You'll start to feel more energized. You'll start to make more money, and you'll start to enjoy the process through and through. So if you're somebody who's in a position, you're ready to make change happen, you're ready to invest in yourself, you really believe that the best investment, the truest ROI is investing in yourself because it continues to give back over and over again, then I invite you to schedule a call, share a little bit about yourself, and see how we might be able to help serve you with the Investor Mindset coaching. You can head right over to investormindset.com/discovery, set up a call, and if there's an opportunity to serve, I'll be right there with you. Thanks, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.